The Baby Boomer Generation, as presented by Anne Marie Higgins, Martin Pedersen, Karina Sanchez, and Kevin Warnicki.
Kevin will begin our presentation by exploring the issue.
For decades, the retirement of the baby boomer generation has been a looming threat, but no more. It is finally here. Every year, over 3 million Americans turn the age of 65, or retirement age. Nearly 25% of living Americans were born between the years of 1946 and 1964, which is the definition of the typical baby boomer. This dynamic represents a class of people 75 million large. The macroeconomic issue with the baby boomer generation is the demand on social service resources that a pool of 75 million retirees will exert on Medicare and the Social Security. The macroeconomic problem is how to fund payments that this generation are depending on, while at the same time create a sustainable benefits path for future generations to come. Social Security is a compact between generations. Simplistically speaking, working adults fund a retirement source through the means of a payroll tax that most elderly Americans rely on as their largest source of income. But the framers of the Social Security Act never intended it to be the primary income source. Other supplemental financial means, such as pensions, savings, and investments, were the expectations to help augment a comfortable retirement lifestyle. President Franklin Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law in 1935. Under the original version of the law, it only allowed retirement benefits for the primary worker. A law change in 1939 added survivors' benefits and benefits for the retiree's spouse and children. In 1956, the law added disability benefits. The very first person who received Social Security benefits was a fellow named Ernest Ackerman, who received a lump sum payment of benefits for 17 cents in January 1937. Payments made since the law's inception through 2016 has totaled $16.1 trillion, while tax receivables have totaled $19 trillion, leaving a cash reserve of $2.8 trillion. Although the Social Security inflows to outflows are positive today, the long-range financial projections are daunting to support the baby boomer generation. Current benefit projections show that in 2035, the Social Security Trust Fund reserves will be depleted and only able to pay 75 cents for each dollar of scheduled benefits. Without significant Social Security legislation reform now, the foundation of retirement protection is in jeopardy for future generations. Lawmakers who decide to take action now, rather than later, permit a broader range of solutions to consider and a longer phase-in period. Karina will now elaborate on possible solutions to fix the macroeconomic issue with Social Security.
Karina will discuss possible solutions.
The Social Security payroll tax is a federal tax imposed on employers, employees, and self-employed individuals. The tax revenues collected are used to pay the cost of Social Security benefits for retirees, survivors of recipients, and disabled individuals. The Social Security tax rate is 12.4% and is paid by both the employer and employee at an equal rate of 6.2% each. For the self-employed, the full 12.4% rate is paid by the individual. Social Security payroll taxes are withheld from wages up to the maximum earning amount, referred to as the earnings cap, which changes annually. The cap limits the earnings on which the Social Security tax contribution can be assessed. The earnings cap has steadily increased from $102,000 in 2008 to a cap of $127,200 in 2017. In 2017, the maximum contribution amount by an individual would come from a worker earning $127,200 with a contribution of $7,886 as determined by multiplying wages by 6.2%. Any wages earned above the income cap are no longer subject to the tax. The Social Security system is heavily reliant on payroll taxes as a source of revenue. In 2015, payroll taxes made up 86% of the program's income sources. Since the mid-1980s, Social Security has collected more annual revenue than it has paid out in benefits. This has resulted in a trust fund balance of $2.8 trillion. With the influx of baby boomer retirements, this fund will be exhausted by the year 2034, at which point Social Security would no longer be able to pay full benefits. The Social Security earnings cap has not kept the pace of increasing income inequality. Raising the earnings cap would help mitigate the erosion of Social Security's payroll tax base caused by rising disparity in wages. The tax rate paid by most workers would not change, while the degree of increase in high earners' taxes would depend on a raised earnings cap. Changes to the earnings cap could significantly close the program's funding gap. Another method of increasing program revenues can be realized by a modest increase in the tax rate itself. Even a slight increase from 6.2% to 6.5% could close 1/5 of the funding gap. While an increase in tax rate alone is not sufficient to fulfill the program's needs, if used in combination with an increase in the earnings cap, could yield the necessary revenues to support the incoming baby boomer retirees and prevent bankrupting of the program. Social Security's full benefit retirement age is mandated by legislation passed by Congress in 1983. The traditional retirement age for full benefit eligibility has been 65, and early retirement benefits are available at age 62, with a permanent reduction in the full benefit amount. The current retirement age is 66 for those born between 1943 and 1954. And the retirement age for full benefit eligibility will peak at age 67. A possible solution to the baby boomer retirement crisis is to find savings in the Social Security program by shortening the years of retirement and encouraging employment among the baby boomer population. These trends are already appearing today, with most men retiring at age 64 and women retiring at age 62, both with reduced benefits. Retirement age workers also make up a significant portion of the workforce. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, workers age 65 and older made up 18.6% of the workforce in 2014. This number is projected to increase to 21.7% by the year 2024. Retirees collecting Social Security benefits prior to retirement age receive a reduction in benefits of $1 for every $3 earned, thus yielding savings to the program in the form of reduced benefits both for early retirement and earning income from work. While baby boomers are making their mark by remaining in the workforce, we have yet to see the long-term impact their presence will have on the incoming millennial workforce. Some studies suggest they are already creating higher rates of competition for higher wage jobs. Millennials tend to be employed in the service industry, while older workers are more concentrated in healthcare support positions requiring higher skill level and carrying better salaries. Both groups are represented in high-skilled, high-wage jobs. However, growth rates in these jobs remain higher for baby boomers at a rate of 20%, compared to only 2% for millennials. This suggests that millennials could be blocked from high-paying jobs by the baby boomers. Recipients of Social Security benefits receive an annual benefit increase known as the Cost of Living Allowance, or COLA. The formula for determining the annual COLA is mandated by the Social Security Act and is based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, known as the CPIW. The CPIW is calculated monthly by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the average percentage increase in the third quarter of the current year drives the COLA increase in Social Security benefits for the following year. A method to find savings in the Social Security program as a solution for the baby boomer retirement crisis is to adjust the cost of living allowance methodology. An experimental calculation specific to the elderly population was mandated by Congress in 1987. This index is known as the CPIE and has collected data on inflation rates for Americans aged 62 and older. Over the first 25 years of calculations, the CPIE generally rose above the standard measures. However, from 2006 to 2011, the CPIE rose at a rate of 2.3%, compared to 2.4% for the CPIW measures. Measures in CPIE show that those over age 62 spend more on healthcare and housing, both of which have seen slightly lower inflation rates compared to overall inflation. Should these trends continue, in conjunction with managed healthcare for the aging population, adjustment to the COLA formula mandate could yield Social Security program savings.
Martin will review a recommendation to the problem.
Recommendations on saving Social Security for future generations. In order to ensure that Social Security is solvent into the future, multiple strategies must be implemented. In this slide, we will examine several options and make recommendations. The amount of revenue going into the program must be increased. A 1% increase in payroll taxes for employers and employees will keep the program solvent and able to pay out 100% of its benefits for the next 75 years. Raising the cap on wages that pay into Social Security will also help. Social Security tax is actually two taxes. The OASDI, the Old Age Survivors and Disabilities Insurance, which is what we generally think of when we think of Social Security, and the HI, the health insurance that funds Medicare. Health insurance tax does not have a wage limit cap, while the OASDI only applies to the first $118,000 of taxable wages. An upward adjustment to that cap on taxable wages would help fund Social Security. Raising the age of retirement, while helpful for some workers, could have negative consequences that should be considered. It may be difficult for workers in physical jobs to continue to work past 65 or 66. While a judge may be able to work well into their 60s or 70s, it is unlikely that a roofer will continue to be employed at 70 years old. Eligible retirees choosing to remain in the workforce also can have a negative impact on younger workers who are unable to move up the ladder as quickly because those jobs are occupied by older workers. Solutions that include adjustments to COLA, the cost of living allowance, also need to be examined closely. It is important that the adjustments to COLA reflect fluctuations in interest rates. Options like chain CPI, which would reduce benefits for recipients over time, could be problematic since retirees are on fixed incomes, and this would have a bigger impact for those who retired early due to a disability or some other reason. It is important to note that while the rhetoric around Social Security can be quite heated, reasonable increases in revenue can be made to make sure that retirees can be protected in their golden years and the baby boomer generation does not endanger the system.
Anne Marie will provide steps necessary to implement the change. Now that we have identified the problem, evaluated possible solutions, and have a potential recommendation on how to reverse the negative effect of our current economic issue, we can now move to steps needed to begin the process of implementing the change. The below steps would be followed as if the issue was brought to the attention of an agency. As related to our identified issue, the change would occur through the Office of the Deputy Commissioner for Legislation and Congressional Affairs. who serves as the focal point for legislative and regulatory activity in the Social Security Administration Office, who then works with Congress. Step 1 would be to further study the problem and its causes in detail, determine how aware the public is of the issue, deciding who will participate in fixing it, and considering what means are available to accomplish a solution. Answers to such questions often help policymakers gauge which policy changes are needed. Step 2 would be to formulate a policy to resolve the problem. After identifying and studying the problem, a new public policy may be formulated or developed. This step is typically marked by discussion and debate between government officials, interest groups, and individual citizens to identify potential obstacles, to suggest alternative solutions, and to set clear goals and list the steps that need to be taken to achieve them. Step 3 would be implementing the policy change. A new policy must be put into effect, which typically requires determining which organizations or agencies will be responsible for carrying it out. Clear communication and coordination, as well as sufficient funding, are also needed to make the steps a success. Step 4, evaluating the effect of the policy change. The final stage in the public policy process, known as evaluation, is typically ongoing. This step involves a study of how effective a new policy has been in addressing the original problem, which often leads to additional public policy changes. It also includes reviewing funds and resources available to ensure that that policy can be maintained. To further expand on the implementation process specifically related to the policy changes, which fulfill step 2 in the process, we would include, or a combination of the following, which we propose for evaluation and discussion. A 1% increase in payroll taxes for employers and employees. Raise the cap on wages that pay into Social Security. Raise the age of retirement and include adjustment to cost of living allowance provision. In conclusion, we have a problem and our government agencies with our president need to find a solution. We close this presentation with a statement made by President Trump from his Time to Get Tough book published in 2011. Social Security faces a problem. 77 million baby boomers set to retire. Now I know there are some Republicans who would be just fine with allowing these programs to wither and die on the vine. The way they see it, Social Security and Medicare are wasteful entitlement programs. But people who think this way need to rethink their position. It's not unreasonable for people who paid into a system for decades to expect to get their money's worth. That's not an entitlement. That's honoring a deal. We as a society must also make an ironclad commitment to providing a safety net for those who can't make one for themselves. Social Security is here to stay. To be sure, we must reform it, root out the fraud, make it more efficient, and ensure that the program is solvent. Same goes for Medicare. Again, people have lived up to their end of the bargain and paid into the program in good faith. Of course, they believe they're entitled to receive the benefits they paid for. They are.